Flatwoods Salamander. It is raining. This is the second long day of dreary rain, pushed out of the west in advance of an October cold front. The tapping of water stirs an internal urge inside the intricate and fragile bones of the flatwoods salamander. The time has come to breed. Breeding requires a journey for which the salamanders do not prepare. Instead, when the breeding urge fires the fibers of their stringy muscles, they turn from rain-soaked grassy uplands of longleaf forest, where they have been living among the tangled field of wiregrass, pinewood's bluestem, and toothache grass. The grassland is riddled with crayfish holes and root burrows, and they have been feeding on worms and other invertebrate fauna of the soil. They begin to crawl down slope. Although in this flat country the decline is so imperceptible, they can feel it only in the deepest recesses of their spines. They turn their 3.5 to 5 inch bodies towards the lowlands, the place of their own hatching. They do not stop. The darkness does not stop them. Rainwater leaks through the clasps of grass and slickens their bodies, drenching the sandy dirt they hurry upon. Along their backs, gray net patterns shape shift with the wag of small feet. Not even a fool would be out in such weather, unable to see the way ahead. Yet here I am too, riding the highway looking for them. Blindly the salamanders crawl, faithful to old processes lodged in their tiny skulls, faithful to the place of beginnings. A picture of that place is soldered into their brains, a map to it etched with the passing millennia. Through time, this map does not wither, but stays sharp and demanding inside them. Over tussocks and around clumps they travel, seeking ephemeral pools formed seasonally in shallow basins in the flatwoods. Here they meet mates and breed in the wet darkness. Females will oviposit up to 160 eggs in small groups under debris or on bare soil in the grassy upper zones of the slow-filling ponds before making the arduous return to the uplands. In 3 to 5 weeks, the eggs will hatch into half-inch larvae with brown and white stripes. In 3 to 4 months, when the pond has begun to dry up, the 3-inch larvae undergo metamorphosis and resurrect from the shrinking water to become terrestrial. Adult salamanders can survive only on dry land. For centuries, flatwood salamanders have migrated over 500 yards, about a third of a mile, each way to and from breeding grounds. Over time, as the pilgrimage becomes more challenging, fewer and fewer of them succeed. In the absence of fire, woody plants overtake pine savannas, and these become barriers that confuse the salamanders. 2- and 4-lane roads are paved between living and breeding territories. Forests are logged, wet areas drained. The map inside their heads no longer matches the terrain. Flatwood salamanders are a lot like striped newts, although another rare inhabitant of pine flatwoods. Striped newts are aquatic salamanders, about 4 inches long, not much longer than a stick of gum. They fit in your palm. They are olive green to dark brown, with 2 red stripes running the length of the body. Endemic to South Georgia and North Florida, striped newts have a complicated natural history. As orange-red efts, they live in the upland sandhill, scrub, or pine flatwood communities with a healthy herb understory. In winter, they migrate as much as 750 yards to breed exclusively in ephemeral pools, the puddles that fill during wet seasons and vanish during droughts. For striped newts, the length of time the pool is filled with water must be short enough to exclude fish, which prey on the larvae. After hatching, small larvae follow one of 2 pathways, though how they decide which career to undertake is unknown. They may transform into terrestrial efts, ridding themselves of gills and fins, and claim a piece of the uplands, returning the next winter to breed if conditions such as rainfall are favorable. Or striped newt larvae may remain in the pond, retaining gills and a full tail fan, although they are sexually mature and breed during the first year of life. Most move into uplands as terrestrial adults in the summer, likely returning in subsequent years to breed in the pond, where sometimes aquatic adults fully transformed and lacking gills are found. Like flatwood salamanders, populations of striped newts too are diving, although they are listed as protected in both states. Since they are most common in areas maintained by regular burning, fire appears to be one of their requirements. In 1970, ecologist Bruce Means, my teacher and friend, located the largest known population of flatwood salamander along a 3-mile slip of paved country highway in the Florida Panhandle. Salamanders are easiest to find during migration, and for 2 years he did a census of the population. During a steady rain, the night of October 9, 1971, he observed 71 individuals in 1 hour crossing the road. On that night, in his field log, he wrote, "If this migration lasted all night, and I suspect that it did, there were 200 to 300 adults moving across the road." Over the course of his 2-year examination in the early 70s, the rate at which he encountered flatwood salamanders was an average of 7.9 individuals per hour, most crossing east to west. During the late 1980s, Means casually studied the site and was shocked to encounter only 0.6 individuals per hour. Suspecting a decline between 1990 and 1992, Means made a concerted effort to count migrating salamanders. 20 hours of viewing time on 12 trips produced only 2 salamanders, or 0.1 per hour. The community was essentially extinct, a decrease of 99% in about 10 generations of salamanders. Means searched to find the blame. Drought was a possibility, but rainfall data revealed no trend toward drought. There appeared to be no increase in highway traffic. Acid rain did not resolve the question, since breeding waters of the cypress ponds are highly acidic anyway. On the east side of the road lay National Forest, where the only change in 22 years was increased closure of the longleaf and native slash pine canopy due to the exclusion of fire. The land to the west, however, was a different story. It was privately owned and had been roller chopped, bedded, and planted with slash pine, where longleaf had originally grown. I saw this with my own eyes. Bedding is common, if destructive, silvicultural practice in which wet soils because it elevates the newly planted trees in order to decrease inundation of their roots, creating a false environment. Bedding uproots cover plants and buries them. After bedding has been carried out, native perennials decrease pronouncedly, and disturbance-loving plants like broom sedge, dog fennel. After bedding has been carried out, native perennials decrease pronouncedly, and disturbance-loving plants like broom sedge, dog fennel, and brambles flourish. In time and without fire, woody plants like gallberry, myrtle-leaved holly, yellow jessamine, greenbrier, and swamp titi creep out of the swamp and march up the slope. Furthermore, bedding jumbles time-ordered layers of soil. Within a decade at Means study site, rows of tightly packed slash pine, planted in long beds, had created a canopy of dense shade the land had never known before. Means told me he believes physical altercations of terrain interfere with the orientation of the flatwood salamanders. They may wander endlessly in search of home ground. If the bedding ridges lie at angles to their paths, they may be diverted away from the ponds, or impregnated females may lay eggs in disconcerted puddles that leave the larvae high and dry without sufficient time to develop before the shallow water recedes beneath a thirsty sun. The females may oviposit on the tops of furrows, mistaking the wetter trenches for ephemeral pools and thinking the furrow is its grassy edge. Silviculture was the only ecological change in 22 years Means found in this flatwood salamander territory. If we are correct that slash pine silviculture is in some way responsible for the decline of what was once a large breeding migration of the flatwood salamander on our study area, wrote Means, then silviculture practices may explain why the geographic distribution today appears to be fragmented and why known populations seem to be declining or extinct. In 1998, 47 known communities of rarely seen salamanders were left. 3/4 in northern Florida, and a handful in Georgia and Alabama.